The message came at 7:12 a.m. No good morning. No, how are you? No name, just, Mom, the mortgage is due. I stared at my phone while my coffee machine hissed behind me, filling the kitchen with steam and that burnt bean smell I usually loved. That morning, it made my stomach tighten instead. 3 gray bubbles appeared, disappeared, came back again. Mom, we're short again. Can you send it today? I didn't answer right away, not because I didn't know what to say, but because, for the first time in years, I realized I didn't have to say yes. Outside my apartment window, traffic crawled past like any normal weekday. People going to work, someone walking a dog. Ordinary life continuing while my phone sat in my hand like it weighed 20 pounds. My thumb hovered over the screen. I thought about the envelope, the lawyer's office, my brother smiling without looking at me, and the sentence I hadn't been able to stop hearing since. Your parents decided to leave the estate entirely to Daniel. Entirely. I swallowed slowly. Another text arrived. Mom, hello. Still no greeting. Still no question about me. Just expectation. For years, I paid their utilities when they fell behind, covered surprise repairs, sent grocery money when Dad said retirement was tight. I never kept score, because I thought we were a family, because I thought we were all building something together, because I believed, stupidly, that loyalty went both ways. I typed one sentence, paused, deleted it, typed again. This time I didn't hesitate. Me, ask your son. I pressed send. The message delivered instantly, and for a moment, the silence felt louder than any argument we'd ever had. I didn't block her. I didn't mute the chat. I just set my phone face down and waited, because I already knew what was coming. The confusion, the guilt, the rewriting of history. What I didn't know yet was how fast everything would turn against me. Within an hour, my aunt posted a vague Facebook status about ungrateful children abandoning family. By lunchtime, my brother shared a quote about loyalty. By evening, 3 relatives I barely spoke to had messaged me asking if my parents were okay financially. Something moved beneath all of it, something coordinated. And one question kept circling my mind. If everything had always been meant for Daniel, why had I been the one paying for it? Another question followed, colder this time. Had they always planned it this way? Or had I only just noticed the role I'd been assigned? Before I keep going, I want to ask you something. Where are you watching from today? And what time is it? I always wonder who's listening when I tell these stories. Different cities, different lives, but somehow we all recognize the same moments, the same family dynamics. And if stories like this feel familiar to you, please subscribe and listen with me. Because what happened next didn't start with that text message. It started long before I realized I was the only one carrying the weight. My name is Lena. I'm 32. At the time all this happened, I lived about 40 minutes away from my parents in a small 1-bedroom apartment above a bakery. Every morning smelled like sugar and bread. I worked as a project coordinator for a medical supply company. Steady job, decent pay, predictable life. I wasn't struggling, but I wasn't wealthy either. Everything I had came from planning carefully. Budget spreadsheets, automatic savings transfers, saying no to things I couldn't afford. My parents liked to describe me as the dependable one. Daniel, my older brother by 3 years, was the free spirit. That was always the wording. Never irresponsible, never reckless, just free. Growing up, Daniel floated between ideas, music production, real estate classes he never finished. 2 different startups that quietly disappeared. My parents supported every attempt with enthusiasm that felt endless. I went to college on scholarships and part-time jobs. Daniel moved back home at 27 temporarily. He never really left. It started small. One winter evening, Mom called. Mom, sweetheart, your father's heating bill came in higher than expected. Me, how much? Mom, only $600. We'll pay you back next month. They always said that. I transferred the money. Next month never came. A few weeks later, Dad, the car needs repairs. Retirement income's a little tight right now. Another transfer, then groceries, then property taxes 1 year when Dad said the timing was bad. Each time felt reasonable. Each time I told myself, they took care of us our whole lives. Helping felt normal. Helping felt loving. Sunday dinners became routine. Their house always smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and overcooked chicken. Dad watched cable news loudly, while Mom moved between kitchen counters like she was managing a restaurant. Daniel usually sat at the table scrolling his phone. One night I noticed something. Dad, Daniel's thinking about investing in crypto again. Mom, it's a big opportunity. I laughed lightly. Didn't the last one lose money? Daniel shrugged. Daniel, you have to risk big to win big. Mom turned toward me. Mom, you're lucky you're so stable, Lena. Not everyone wants that kind of life. I remember smiling politely, but inside I felt dismissed, as if stability was less impressive than chasing dreams funded by someone else. Still, I kept helping, because I thought we were all contributing differently. I worked. Daniel figured things out. My parents supported him emotionally, and someday, I assumed, things would balance. About 2 years before the will meeting, Mom mentioned they were refinancing. We sat at the kitchen table while she sorted paperwork. Mom, we just want everything organized for the future. Me, makes sense. Dad, the house will stay in the family. He said it casually. I didn't ask questions. I didn't think I needed to. In my mind, the family meant both of us. I visited twice a week. I fixed tech problems, helped schedule medical appointments, picked up prescriptions. When Dad struggled with online banking, I set everything up. When Mom worried about expenses, she called me first. Daniel rarely participated in those conversations, but I told myself he showed love differently. Looking back, that was the first lie I told myself to keep peace. The first moment something felt wrong happened at Thanksgiving. Nothing dramatic, just a tone. We were setting the table. Mom handed Daniel the carving knife like it was ceremonial. Mom, one day this will all be yours to host. She said it warmly, proudly. I froze with a stack of plates in my hands. Me, both of us, right? The room went quiet for half a second, too quick for anyone else to notice. Mom laughed. Mom, oh honey, you know what I mean. She didn't clarify. Dad changed the subject. Daniel didn't look up. That night, driving home, I replayed the moment over and over. Why did that feel strange? I convinced myself I was overthinking. Families say awkward things. It meant nothing. Except after that dinner, requests for financial help increased. More frequent, more urgent, and somehow always directed at me. A month later, Mom called again. Mom, we're short on the insurance payment. Me. Did Daniel help? Silence. Then a sigh. Mom, he's figuring things out right now. I stared at my kitchen wall. Me, I am too. Mom, you're stronger than him. You've always been. It sounded like praise, but it landed like responsibility. I sent the money anyway, and afterward I sat on my couch thinking something I didn't want to admit. Why am I the only safety net? The lawyer's office smelled like old carpet and printer ink. I almost didn't go. Mom said it was just paperwork, something about organizing assets and medical directives. Daniel arrived late, sunglasses still on indoors. We sat across from Mr. Feldman, a quiet man with folders stacked neatly in front of him. He began explaining estate planning. I listened casually until he turned a page. Mr. Feldman, your parents have chosen to designate Daniel as sole beneficiary of the residence and primary estate holder. I blinked, waited for clarification. None came. Me, sorry, soul. Mom folded her hands. Mom, we talked about this. No, we hadn't. Me, I thought everything was shared. Dad cleared his throat. Dad, Daniel lives there. It's simpler. Daniel finally looked at me, not apologetic, just comfortable, like this was obvious. My chest tightened. Me, so I'm not included. Mom smiled gently, the same smile she used when calming children. Mom, you're independent, Lena. You don't need help. The sentence landed harder than anger ever could. I nodded slowly. Inside my head, something rearranged itself. Every payment, every transfer, every late-night call. All of it suddenly looked different. Driving home, I whispered aloud. They already decided. I realized I had been contributing to a future I wasn't part of, and then another thought followed. If the house belongs to Daniel, why am I paying the mortgage? For 2 weeks, I kept helping, out of habit, out of disbelief. I wanted proof I was misunderstanding. Then I checked my bank statements. 3 years of transfers, tens of thousands of dollars, utilities, insurance, repairs, mortgage assistance. I sat at my dining table and said quietly, "They knew." That realization didn't feel explosive. It felt cold, precise, like solving a math problem, and that was the moment something inside me changed. I didn't confront them, I didn't argue, I simply stopped sending money. No announcement, no drama, just silence. A week passed, then two. No one noticed at first. Then the bills started arriving. Then the phone calls began. And finally, that morning text, "The mortgage is due." I replied, "Ask your son." What I didn't expect was how quickly my entire family would turn me into the villain, and how far they would go to protect a lie that had existed long before I ever noticed it. The reply came 12 minutes later, not from my mom, from Daniel. "Daniel, what's your problem?" I stared at the screen while sitting at my work desk, emails piling up unread. The office hummed with printers and quiet conversations, but everything felt strangely distant. I didn't answer immediately. 3 more messages appeared. "Daniel, Mom says you refuse to help. They're stressed out. Why are you acting like this?" I exhaled slowly. It was interesting how fast the story had already changed. Not Lena stopped paying bills she was never responsible for, but Lena refused to help. I typed carefully. "Me, I thought you were handling the house, since it's yours." The typing bubble appeared instantly. Stopped, appeared again, then disappeared completely. No response. That silence told me more than any argument could. He didn't expect me to say it out loud. For years, everything operated on implication. Roles existed without being named. I was the provider. Daniel was the heir. But nobody wanted those 2 truths spoken in the same sentence. By noon, Mom called. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Finally, I answered. Her voice came sharp and already emotional. "Mom, why are you punishing us?" No greeting, no curiosity, just accusation. I leaned back in my chair. "I'm not punishing anyone." "Mom, the mortgage is late. Do you understand what that means?" "Yes." Silence stretched. She waited for me to fold like I always had. When I didn't, her tone shifted softer, strategic. "Mom, we've always helped each other." I watched a coworker walk past carrying a coffee tray, laughing about weekend plans. Normal life continued while mine tilted sideways. "You left everything to Daniel." She sighed loudly. "Mom, that has nothing to do with this." That sentence landed heavier than anything else she could have said. Nothing to do with this. I felt something settle inside me, a calm I hadn't known before. "It has everything to do with this." Another pause, then the first crack of anger. "Mom, you're being selfish." The word hung there. Selfish. After years of financial support, after years of showing up, I realized she truly believed it. Instead of arguing, I listened, really listened. She wasn't asking for help. She was defending a system. This wasn't a one-time request. It was an expectation I had unknowingly agreed to. That evening, my phone started buzzing nonstop. Not texts, notifications, Facebook, Instagram, family group chats. My aunt posted. "Some children forget who sacrificed for them." 30 likes, 2 heart reactions from cousins. Then my cousin Lisa commented, "Family should come first." I scrolled slowly. No names mentioned, but everyone knew who it was about. 5 minutes later, Daniel posted a picture of my parents smiling at dinner. Caption, "Doing everything I can for the people who raised me." My stomach tightened. I whispered aloud, alone in my apartment. "Wow," the family group chat lit up. "Aunt Carol, your mom seems very stressed lately." Cousin Mark, "Hope everyone's okay." Then Daniel added, "Daniel, just trying to hold things together over here." I watched the typing cursor blink. They were building a narrative in real time, and they expected me to stay silent. They're not asking what happened. They already decided. Sunday dinner still happened. Mom insisted. "Let's talk face to face," she said. When I arrived, the atmosphere felt rehearsed. The dining table was already set. Dad avoided eye contact. Daniel leaned back casually, arms crossed. Mom served food before anyone spoke. Control through normalcy. Finally, she sat down. "Mom, we need to address this situation." Not understand, address, like I was a problem to fix. "Dad, your mother's been very upset." I nodded slowly. "I understand." Daniel laughed under his breath. "Daniel, do you," I looked at him, really looked, comfortable, confident, untouched by financial pressure. Me, I think so. Mom clasped her hands. Mom, we never expected you to abandon us. That word again. Abandon. My fork rested untouched on the plate. Me, I didn't abandon you. I stopped paying bills for a house that isn't mine. Silence fell hard across the table. Dad shifted uncomfortably. Daniel rolled his eyes. Daniel, you're making this transactional. I almost smiled. Transactional, after years of bank transfers. Me, it already was. Mom, families don't keep score. Me, I wasn't keeping score. I trusted you. Dad, we thought you understood the arrangement. Me, what arrangement? Daniel, that I'd stay here and take care of them. Me, by not paying anything. Mom's money isn't everything. Me, apparently it is when you need mine. Dad, that's unfair. Me, so is funding an inheritance I'm excluded from. No one spoke. For the first time, they didn't have a prepared answer. I noticed something strange. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even shaking. I felt awake. Like I'd stepped outside a script I'd followed my entire life. The next week escalated fast. Relatives stopped replying to my messages. An uncle called to check in, but spent 20 minutes explaining how aging parents needed sacrifice. A cousin messaged, "Your mom cried telling us what's happening." I reread that text 3 times, not asking what happened, not hearing both sides, just accepting the version already distributed. Then came the post that changed everything. Mom shared a long Facebook paragraph. Some children forget family values once they become successful. Hundreds of reactions, comments flooding in, people I barely knew writing. Stay strong. Kids today are different. I stared at the screen, feeling heat rise behind my eyes. Not rage, something deeper, erasure. They're rewriting history. And suddenly I understood something terrifying. If I stayed silent, this would become the official story. That night I opened my banking app again. But this time I went further back. 5 years. 6. Every payment categorized. Every transfer timestamped. I noticed something. Whenever Daniel made a risky financial decision, a new expense appeared for my parents. When his business failed, right arrow, I covered utilities. When his car broke down, right arrow, I paid insurance. When he invested, right arrow, the mortgage suddenly became tight. My breath slowed. I whispered, "They replaced his responsibility with mine." It wasn't random. It wasn't occasional help. It was structural, intentional. My role had been designed long ago. Daniel wasn't failing upward. He was being protected upward. And I was the invisible support beam. I wasn't helping temporarily. I had been subsidizing their decision. And once that clicked, the guilt disappeared. I didn't argue online. I didn't defend myself. I didn't post vague quotes. Instead, I started documenting. Screenshots of bank transfers, saved text messages, voicemails, dates, amounts, patterns. I even exported transaction histories into spreadsheets. The process felt oddly peaceful. Each file felt like reclaiming a piece of reality. I finally told my friend Maya over coffee. "Maya, wait, you paid their mortgage? Me, parts of it for years." She stared at me. "Maya, and they left everything to your brother." I nodded. "Maya, Lena, this isn't favoritism. This is financial exploitation." The word echoed. Exploitation. I hadn't allowed myself to frame it that way. Me, I think they genuinely believe I owe them. "Maya, that doesn't mean you do." I looked down at my coffee cup, steam rising slowly. For the first time, someone validated what I felt without minimizing it. I realized something important. Arguing emotionally would never change their story. But facts couldn't be guilt-tripped. A week later, Dad called. His voice unusually formal. "Dad, we should have a family discussion this Sunday. Everyone will be there." Everyone. That word told me everything. This wasn't reconciliation, it was intervention. They wanted witnesses, pressure, consensus. I agreed immediately. Me, okay, because by then I was ready too. Saturday night, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by printed documents, bank statements, transfer confirmations, text message screenshots. 7 years of quiet support turned into physical proof. I organized everything neatly into folders, not out of anger, out of clarity. I wasn't planning revenge. I was preparing truth. They made this public. So the truth will be public too. Sunday arrived. Their living room filled with relatives, aunts, uncles, cousins, Daniel sitting confidently beside Mom like a supportive son in a family drama. Everyone already looking at me like I was the difficult one. Mom smiled tightly. Mom, we're all here because Lena has been struggling with family priorities. I sat down quietly, placed my folder on my lap, and realized something in that moment. They expected an apology. What they were about to receive was a complete reconstruction of reality. The living room felt staged. That was the first thing I noticed. Extra chairs pulled in from the dining room. Coffee already poured. Plates of untouched cookies arranged neatly on the table like this was some kind of community meeting instead of a family conversation. My Aunt Carol sat closest to Mom, her posture already sympathetic. Daniel leaned back on the couch, relaxed, one arm stretched across the cushion behind Mom like a silent declaration of loyalty. Dad stood instead of sitting, hands in pockets, pacing slightly. Everyone turned toward me when I walked in. The air felt heavy, judgment waiting. Mom spoke first. Mom, thank you for coming, everyone. We thought it would help if the family talked openly. I sat in the only empty chair, placed my folder carefully on my lap. No one asked how I was. That detail registered immediately. Aunt Carol, sweetheart, your mother's been devastated. Cousin Lisa, we're worried about what's happening. Dad, your refusal to help has created a lot of stress. I nodded slowly. They had rehearsed this. I could feel it. Mom folded her hands dramatically. Mom, we don't understand why you suddenly changed. There it was, the narrative opening statement. I took a breath. Me, before we start, can I ask a question? They exchanged glances. Mom hesitated. Mom, of course. Me, what exactly have you told everyone? Silence. Daniel answered instead. Daniel, that you stopped helping when we needed you. Simple, clean, convincing, and incomplete. They genuinely believed this version. That realization removed the last trace of hesitation. I leaned forward slightly. Calm voice. No emotion. Me, did you also tell them I've been paying household expenses for years? Mom's smile tightened. Mom, we never asked you to keep track of that. Deflection. Expected. I nodded once. Then opened the folder. Paper sliding against paper sounded louder than it should have. Heads tilted. Curiosity replacing certainty. Me. These are bank transfers from me to you. I handed copies across the coffee table. Aunt Carol, what is this? Me, utilities, insurance, repairs, mortgage assistance. Dad, that's unnecessary, Lena. Me, it's accurate. Daniel, you're trying to embarrass us. Me, no, I'm clarifying. Mom, families help each other. Me, yes, they do. I paused, let silence stretch, then added softly, me, which is why I assumed I was part of the future of this home. The room shifted. People started reading the documents, eyebrows lifted, pages turned. Numbers speak differently than emotions. Aunt Carol frowned. Aunt Carol, these amounts are real? Me, yes. I watched uncertainty spread like slow-moving water. For the first time, the story cracked. Daniel sat upright now, no longer relaxed. Daniel, you volunteered that help. I met his eyes. Me, did I volunteer the inheritance too? Silence hit hard. Someone inhaled sharply. I pulled out another document, the copy of the will summary, placed it gently on the table. Me, this confirms the estate goes entirely to Daniel. Mom's face changed instantly. Fear, not anger. Fear. Mom, that was private. Me, you made this public when you told everyone I abandoned you. No one spoke. Relatives looked back and forth between us, reconstructing events in real time. Cousin Mark. Wait, so Lena helped pay for the house but doesn't inherit it. Dad, it's more complicated. Me, it isn't. Daniel, I live here. Me, and I financed it. The words came out calm, measured, unavoidable. I watched understanding ripple across faces. Past memories rearranged themselves for them. Every holiday where I arrived tired after work. Every joke about me being the responsible one. Every time Daniel talked about future plans involving the house. Suddenly, those moments meant something different. I wasn't finished. Because this wasn't about revenge, it was about accuracy. I handed out another sheet. A timeline. Me. Whenever Daniel had financial setbacks, household expenses increased. Murmurs spread. Aunt Carol, oh, Cousin Lisa, I didn't realize, Mom's voice trembled. Mom, we were protecting your brother. There it was, finally spoken aloud. I nodded, me, by transferring responsibility to me. Dad sat heavily in his chair. For the first time, he looked tired instead of defensive. I felt strangely calm. No adrenaline, no triumph, just relief, like exhaling after holding breath for years. Daniel stood up first. That's when I knew the balance had already shifted. He wasn't relaxed anymore. His jaw tightened, eyes moving between the papers spread across the table, and the relatives now reading them carefully instead of nodding at him. For years, I reacted. That day, I observed. Mom tried to regain control. Mom, Lena, this isn't necessary. We can discuss this privately. Privately, meaning quietly, meaning safely for them, I closed the folder slowly. Me. You made it public when you told everyone I abandoned you. Nobody interrupted. Even the house sounded different. No clinking dishes, no background TV, just breathing, pages turning, reality settling. I felt something unfamiliar. Not anger, authority. For the first time, I wasn't defending myself. I was directing the conversation. Daniel, you're blowing this out of proportion. Me, am I? I slid another paper across the table, a highlighted spreadsheet. 7 years of payments, totals circled in red, gasps followed. Aunt Carol, Lena, this is over $80,000. Daniel laughed nervously. Daniel, that can't be right. Me, it is. I looked directly at him. Me. You inherited the house. I financed it. Silence detonated across the room. This is the first time anyone has heard the truth without filters, and once people see the full picture, they cannot unsee it. I wasn't done. Because exposure without consequence changes nothing. I reached into my bag and pulled out another envelope, the lawyer's letter. Dad frowned. Dad, what is that? I spoke calmly. Me, legal notice. Mom's face paled. Mom. Legal? I nodded. Me, I consulted an attorney last week. These payments qualify as financial contribution toward property maintenance and mortgage preservation. Every eye moved back to me. Me. I'm not asking for favors anymore. I'm reclaiming my legal equity. Daniel snapped. Daniel, you're suing your own family. I shook my head slightly. Me, no, I'm correcting a financial arrangement that was hidden. I let the words settle. Then continued. Me, the attorney calculated my contributions. I'm entitled to reimbursement or an ownership percentage. The room shifted instantly. This wasn't emotional anymore. This was real. Mom looked at Dad. Dad looked at Daniel. For the first time, they understood. The system they built had consequences. Mom, you would really do this to us? Me, you already did it to me. Dad, we never meant harm. Me, intent doesn't erase impact. Daniel, this is greedy. I met his eyes calmly. Me, expecting someone else to fund your inheritance is greedy. He had no response. None. I stood up, not dramatically, just decisively. Me. Since my reputation was discussed publicly, I've already corrected the record. Confused looks. Mom blinked. Mom, what do you mean? I unlocked my phone, opened Facebook, turned the screen toward them. A post pinned at the top of my profile. Not emotional, not angry, just facts. Screenshots of transfers, dates, amounts. A calm explanation. I supported my parents financially for years, believing we were building shared security. After learning the estate was assigned solely to my brother, I stepped back from funding a property I do not own. Just evidence. And comments. Hundreds of them. Support. Questions. People recognizing manipulation patterns. Aunt Carol whispered. Aunt Carol. Oh, Mom sat down heavily. The narrative had flipped. Publicly. Irreversibly. Internal reflection, I didn't feel vindictive. I felt balanced. Like scales finally leveling after years tilted in one direction. Dad spoke quietly. Dad, you forced our hand. I shook my head. Me, no, I removed secrecy. Then I delivered the final truth. Me, I was never angry about the will. I was angry that you expected lifelong financial loyalty without honesty. I paused, looked at each of them. Me, you didn't just choose Daniel, you chose to keep me useful. No one argued, because they couldn't. Daniel finally spoke, softer now. Daniel, so what happens now? That question used to terrify me. Now it felt simple. Now you take responsibility. I told Dad. I handed the legal notice to Dad. You have two options. I spoke evenly. Reimburse my documented contributions over time. Add my legal equity share to the property. The room went still. Power had fully transferred. I wasn't pleading for fairness. I was enforcing it. Relatives began speaking, this time not defending my parents. Cousin Mark, honestly, that sounds reasonable. Aunt Carol, she supported you for years. Lisa, I didn't know any of this. The collective perception flipped, and my parents realized something crucial. The family audience they gathered to pressure me had become witnesses against them. I left before negotiations began, because the outcome no longer depended on emotion. It depended on accountability. 2 weeks later, Dad called, his voice tired. Older, Dad, we spoke with a lawyer. Pause. Dad, fine, you'll receive reimbursement payments. But Ray, your parents, you really shouldn't have done this. I listened quietly and said that's what I thought. No celebration, no victory speech, just confirmation. He hesitated. Dad, we didn't think you'd push back. I answered honestly. Neither did I. Daniel stopped calling entirely. The dynamic changed permanently. Not warmer, but real and strangely lighter, because I was no longer needed as a resource, only as a person. Healing didn't mean pretending nothing happened. I reduced visits, stopped automatic emotional availability. When conversations turned toward guilt, I ended them calmly. One evening, Mom said, Mom, I miss how close we used to be. I answered gently, we weren't close, I was responsible. She didn't argue, because deep down she knew some ties didn't need dramatic endings. They simply loosened until they no longer controlled you. I didn't lose my family. I lost a role, and that role had been exhausting. 1 year later, I moved into a brighter apartment with huge windows and plants everywhere. I traveled alone for the first time. I slept without anxiety about emergency calls or surprise expenses. The reimbursement payments arrived monthly, not as revenge, as correction, proof that my effort had value. I invested the money into my future instead of someone else's, and every month felt like reclaiming another piece of myself. I want your honest opinion. If you discovered you had financially supported a future that excluded you, would you have walked away quietly? Or would you have done what I did, exposed the truth and taken your rights back? Backhand index pointing right, was this justice or betrayal? Backhand index pointing right, should family ever mix money and loyalty? Backhand index pointing right, would you forgive them after this? Tell me what you would have done. Because stories like this happen more often than people admit, and sometimes the calmest person in the room is the one who finally decided to stop being used. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe before leaving.